On this episode of Purposely Curious, we discuss the crazy true crime saga currently surrounding the Murdoch family dynasty of South Carolina. We delve into the murders of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh and how a web of lies and deceit were now coming together, bringing other deaths into the Murdoch murder mystery spotlight. This case is ongoing, but we discuss how crazy the information and ties to this family came out all in a matter of 3 months. So get your notepad ready and get nice and cozy as this episode starts now. Hello, Leonie.
Buongiorno, Mary. How are you?
I'm doing good. I love just waiting to hear how you're going to say hello and how you're going to greet us on every episode.
Oh, my job is to drive me crazy for sure.
Well, actually, earlier today when I was on my Instagram, the person who initially did not complain, he just said he couldn't understand why he was triggered by greetings, Mary, right. Said that he's been really enjoying your greetings weekly and also your goodbyes.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious.
So just wanted to share some of that feedback.
Well, no, I appreciate that. That's awesome. Because, I don't know if anybody appreciates it or even notices, and hey, you got to change it up, and changing it up keeps it fresh, keeps it young, keeps it wild,
And keeps him from feeling triggered, right?
That too.
But I did tell you that someone did write to me and said, but I like greetings, Mary. So
of course.
Can't make everyone happy, apparently.
No.
Yeah. So before we actually get into today's subject, I wanted to just give you guys kind of a heads up that next week, Leonie and I are going to be doing a Halloween little episode.
Ooh,
so be ready for that. Yes, if you guys haven't noticed or haven't heard, Leonie is big in the horror culture. They have a podcast that's pretty cool out there. Yes. Yeah, I always got to talk it up. So So be ready for that for next week.
It'll be fun. I promise you guys, it'll be fun.
Yes, it will be a lot of fun. Do you think a lot of people are going to be dressing up this year?
I think so. I think this is the year. This is the big comeback. I mean, we're still in the weird yellow danger zone thing, but I mean, as long as bars are open, and stuff, I think people are just going to be like, nope, we got to get out and walk the streets. Because, walking the streets is probably safe as long as you're not in the crowd of 1 million people, But I think people just want to get out and do stuff. So I think this is the year.
Yeah. Yeah. So everyone stay safe. But I'm definitely looking forward to the holiday season myself.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Yeah. So on this episode, I wanted to before we even start, I want to just quickly touch on the last episode on the Gabby Petito case.
Yes.
I did get a lot of feedback from women who basically said they started looking into reactive abuse, or they had been in situations themselves where they also did the same.
Right.
And a lot has happened since. We're not going to go into too much detail, but it seems like, remember I kept saying we as professionals, whether medical or, teachers or, social workers or cops, we need more education on how to kind of see these things. And so I know the police department is doing an internal investigation now because multiple videos from different cops show that this could have easily been avoided. Even when one cop was saying, she could end up dead, and
right.
Boy, does that, I'm sure, haunt that poor guy. And I say poor because I think sometimes we take our daily jobs like too routine, and maybe with our fatigue eyes and our fatigue brain don't really search for these things, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think definitely all sectors need to do more education on domestic violence and what comes under that umbrella. So, but I'll leave it at that. So thank you for the feedback, and I hope that we can continue to grow, and when it comes to knowing the warning signs for anyone going through that, male or female, right?
Right.
But I wanted to ask you if you had heard of the Murdoch mystery murders.
Let me see. Is this the one about the mother and son?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think I heard something about it. It was a boat accident, right, or something.
No.
Okay, I got the wrong case.
So let me. No, it's the right case.
Oh, it is.
But yes, but there's a spider web of information that I am so excited to share with you guys.
Yes.
Because I love these murder mysteries. So you are correct. Maggie and Paul Murdoch were murdered on June 7th of 2021 of this year. They were gunned down in their home.
Oh, damn.
Alex Murdoch, who is the husband of Maggie and the father of Paul Murdoch, called the death in to police, crying hysterically, stated he had just gone back home only to find his wife and son deceased, right? So I saw this trending on Twitter. That's how I got, I've said multiple times, Twitter is my news, right?
Right.
So I had just logged into Twitter and the headline was very basic: prominent lawyer family, 2 members executed in their home. And I was like, wow, because I started reading the hashtag and people were saying, this, like, who would want to kill this prominent family execution style? Like, this doesn't sound right. Like, there's something fishy.
Yeah.
So of course I had to dig into this and follow this case. The phone call of the 911 call was released. And again, we're going back to Alex Murdoch, who is the husband of Maggie Murdoch and father of Paul Murdoch, where he claims he came home and found them deceased. He was hysterical. He was crying. Dispatcher tells him, okay, we're sending out help, but please don't touch the evidence or the bodies because of evidence and so on, right?
Right.
So Alex Murdoch stated in his hysterics, I've already touched them. I'm so sorry. Like, I touched them when I wanted to see if they were breathing. And in all honesty, I think any of us would do the same, right? If we're showing up, we see our loved one on the floor, we're going to run to them and maybe touch them, right?
Yeah.
So that didn't seem suspicious whatsoever, because I think that's human nature, right?
Right.
So in the phone call, he then tells the dispatcher in his crying hysterics that he was going to call some of his family members. So he was going to hang up, and the dispatcher said, okay. Now, I don't know if I'd hang up because I'd probably be really scared. I'd probably stay on the phone with the dispatcher. But everyone's different, right?
Yeah.
So maybe about a week or two, the brothers of the Murdoch family gave an interview to ABC News, and they were in tears because, they were discussing Maggie and Paul's deaths, right?
Right.
And they also talked about Alex Murdoch, saying that he was so distraught. We just don't know. We want to get help from the public. And the ABC correspondent asked, would someone want to kill them? Was there death threats against them? Because I think people thought this was odd, like a prominent, rich, Murdoch family of South Carolina. Would someone want to kill them? And they said, no, we don't know of any of this. And again, if you see the Murdoch brothers, they're crying. They look sad and distraught.
Yeah.
Alex Murdoch was not in that interview. So far, the murders have been unsolved, but it's an active investigation, and this is where it gets deep, okay? So here I'm following up this. So I'm like, okay, so this family is going, they were, someone was after them, it sounds like, right? And the family was pleading on TV, crying, but again, not Alex Murdoch. So I'm like, the conspiracist that I am, I'm like, who would want to kill family members of this prominent lawyer, family, attorney, legacy, dynasty family, right?
Right.
Is it the government? Is it a former client? So I was really into this story. So as the true crime community starts looking into this, and I say true crime community, I'm talking about the online, I'm always raving about it. The online community, they started to look into this family and see who would want to kill this family, or who would want to threaten them. Like, what? There has to be more to it, right? And why? So we want to start with, who are the Murdochs, right? So they live in South Carolina. The Murdoch family is a family with a long list of prominent lawyers, historically, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of like when we discussed the Armie Hammer's family connection in a historical context. Do you remember that? Where we talked about his family? Yes. So for almost 100 years, there was there's always been a member of the Murdoch family who held the title of the circuit solicitor that covers 5 counties in South Carolina. A solicitor in South Carolina is basically like the district attorney prosecutor in California and other states, basically. In 1920, it became an elective office, and Randolph, and I want you to keep track of all these names, okay? Randolph Murdoch Sr. was elected to be the solicitor, which again is like the district attorney prosecutor, right?
Right.
He was elected to that position, and he died in an accident in 1940, in a train accident in 1940, and was succeeded by his other attorney's son, Randolph Buster Murdoch II, who was in office as the DA solicitor, right, until his retirement in 1986.
Okay.
So right there, it's from 1920 to 1986. It's a Murdoch in position of the head district attorney for 5 counties in South Carolina.
Wow.
Right? He retires. Then Buster's son, Randolph Murdoch III, was elected for the same position of solicitor/DA and served until his retirement of 2005. So that's almost 100 years, just shy of 100 years of them having that position of head prosecutor.
Right.
This family also maintained very tight political bonds because they were the prosecutor role. So, they had a lot of power. And the family also headed a successful law firm called PMPED with a reputation of having some of the best lawyers in South Carolina. And so this law firm will come up later. Okay. Alex Murdoch and his brother Randolph Murdoch IV were lawyers who worked for PMPED law firm. Okay. So they're not now solicitors, but now their family is known as a dynasty of heavy shot attorneys, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to set the crime scene for you, right? So we have 2 murders, right? So now you can tell that this family has power, right? Political power in these towns, in these counties, for very decades and decades. So back to Maggie and Paul Murdoch's murders. Remember, Maggie is Alex Murdoch's wife and father to Paul Murdoch, right?
Right.
Who would want to hurt this family? So that was the question. And so when people started to dig in, they noted that Paul Murdoch had been in trouble with the law recently. And this is where the who and the why could be coming into the picture. He was known, so, when he was murdered, right, Paul Murdoch was murdered with his mother, people started to talk online and saying, he was known for being a spoiled prick, basically. Nobody liked him. He was a fucking asshole, right?
So how old is Paul at this point?
19, 20.
And his mom, Maggie, how old?
No, wait. He 19. So he must have been like 21. I don't know how old his mom is.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically people had no sympathy, or people felt like someone must have been out for these foos because he was a fucking prick and spoiled and an asshole, basically privileged Murdoch, right?
Right.
So why was he in trouble with the law? So the people kept digging, right? And so it turns out he had small petty things, but that he would get in trouble for, except one of them. And that's the boat crash that you were talking about. In 2019, Paul Murdoch and 5 of his friends on February 24th went on a night out of underage drinking, right? And they used the Murdoch's family boat to transport them to the places they were hitting up that night, right? And so, again, they were all drunk, and you see videos now that people are looking back, CCTV videos of them. You see them walking kind of drunk, and it just seems like teenagers doing what teenagers do, except they're not driving a fucking car. They're fucking driving a fucking boat, right?
Right.
Again, privilege, money, right? So basically, there's no lights, and apparently it was the middle of the night. They were speeding, and the boat, because there was no lights, crashed into the bridge. Everyone was thrown off of the boat, and everyone was accounted for except one person who was missing. The 911 calls to the dispatcher, they were told basically that we don't know where we are. We hit a bridge. And so you can hear in the transcripts, the audio that she's trying to see, where are you? Like, and they're trying to explain it. When the cops finally find them, there's a audio of Anthony Cook, who's one of the other fives who were with Paul Murdoch, right?
Yeah.
He's the boyfriend of the girl who's missing, and her name is Mallory Beach. And so what he stated, and you hear it in the audio, was that Paul was driving kind of erratic, kind of speeding, and at one point he put his girlfriend Mallory on his lap. Next thing you know, they're all in the water and he can't find her.
Oh, damn.
And you hear him crying, he's distressed. And then, this is the weirdest shit, man. In the police recording, he starts yelling at Paul Murdoch. This is audio. It's not footage, it's audio. And this is exactly, he's yelling at him angry. Now, Anthony Cook, the boyfriend of the girl who's missing, starts yelling at Paul Murdoch, who's dead, but we're looking back, right?
Right.
Are you fucking smiling like it's funny? My fucking girlfriend is gone. Is this fucking funny to you, basically? So why the fuck is Paul Murdoch smiling in his intoxicated state, right?
Yeah.
His girlfriend's missing, and you hear the distress in his voice. He's pissed.
Right.
But guess what?
Girlfriend's not missing.
No, she's missing.
She
was missing. She was missing. Guess what? The police comes up to a boat accident, right?
Mm-hmm.
5 people are accounted for. 1 person is missing, and they're all obviously intoxicated. And all the witnesses that are there are saying Paul Murdoch was driving. They did not bring him in to jail. They did not do a sobriety test, and they let him go.
You know, I'm really curious though. Do you know the drinking age in South Carolina? Is it 20, 21, or?
They were 19 at the time, so
Right.
it's definitely it's got to be 21, because that'll come into play later.
Okay. So I know some states out there in the South and the East are like 18. You know, that's why I was curious about that.
Yeah, no. So that'll come in later, in the investigation. But the key was that they did not bring him in. They didn't do a sobriety test. They didn't bring him in, right? And that tells me privilege, right?
Oh, of course. So without that, they have no proof that he was even drinking.
Yeah, exactly. And so if they didn't bring him in, do a sobriety test, and then they bring him in a day or 2 days later, they got nothing on him, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that just goes to show you the power of this family. Now, this is where the people started talking online. Oh, remember that case? And, people felt that he got away with it or was going to get away with it. But then this is where the timeline is very, very important. The police didn't do any of that, right? So so normal people like you and me, we could get a DUI just riding a fucking skateboard or a bicycle.
Oh, of course.
This motherfucker crashed a fucking boat. He was intoxicated as everybody else was, and there's a girl missing, and they failed to do a sobriety test or bring them in. What the fuck?
Jeez.
And these people were saying he was driving and he's fucking smiling at the boyfriend of the girl who's missing. That's some psychopath shit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now, we're going back to he comes from a family of power, right? Mallory Beach's body was found on March 3rd, right? And since obviously this was 2019, right?
Right.
Later that month, Mallory Beach's family actually filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Paul Murdoch and the convenience store who sold them the alcohol because they were underage, meaning under 21.
Yeah.
Apparently, he used his older brother's ID. So his other older brothers is also someone we're going to talk about later. But right now, he's like the good one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they brought a lawsuit against the family. They didn't press charges. The police didn't press charges. The family of the deceased brought a lawsuit. Tell me that shit is not privilege.
Yeah, of course.
Of the Murdochs. Okay. Now, So now we know this. He never spent a day in jail, blah, blah, blah. On April 18th, from pressure from the family, which would have been Mallory's birthday, Paul Murdoch was indicted for driving a boat, intoxicating, causing 1 death, and also on 2 counts of driving a boat, intoxicating, causing severe bodily injury for 2 other people. But they took almost, it took them a while to indict them after the family had put in their lawsuit, if that makes sense.
Yes.
He pleaded not guilty to all of these charges, right? Now, keep in mind, he's pleading not guilty to all of these, and then he was smiling right after the crash at the boyfriend who was like telling the cop, she's gone. No fucking remorse, right?
Yeah.
The court ordered mediation between both parties because this is basically a lawsuit brought by the family of the deceased, right?
Right.
Between the Beach family and the Murdochs. Now, the Murdochs have a law firm that is known for being really good. They know the fucking law, and the Murdochs are a fucking law dynasty in South Carolina, right? So the mediation failed and no resolution was reached. So it took them a year to mediate, and it failed completely, where they said we have to go to trial on June 4th of this year. Now, do you remember the date I said earlier?
No.
Okay. So on June 4th, the mediation failed and it had to go to trial. So now the Murdoch family has to see Paul Murdoch, the youngest privileged kid that the world would call, go to trial. He was murdered 3 days later.
Oh, damn.
So I started the story with his murders happening on June 7th. So after this, I'm like, holy shit, I didn't know none of that was happening. Yeah. So he was murdered 3 days after the mediation failed with that other case. And they said they had to go to trial.
Wow.
Yeah. So then the true crime. Yeah. So the true crime people were like, okay, this shit, there's a motive here. There's a motive. We got to find the motive, right?
Yeah.
Could it be someone on the passengers, the boyfriend?
The cook, Anthony Cook. Yeah.
Yeah. So people started really, really digging into this, right?
Right.
But at the same time, they're also uncovering the talkings of the neighborhood, which is he's an asshole. There's more to this story. And people started digging, right? And also investigators started listening, if that makes sense. Because remember, they weren't doing shit before that, right?
Right.
So now they're listening. What do you have to say so far? Because it gets really complicated.
Oh, man. It sounds like some revenge plot.
That's what we all thought.
Yeah.
Yep.
But, man, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I wonder if Anthony Cook was involved.
Oh, well, let's find out. Okay, so now we have 3 days later, right? He's dead.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. But it's him and his mom, right?
Right.
So I didn't know this timeline. You remember, I just started listening to this story because they were killed. 2 family members of a prominent attorney dynasty in South Carolina was killed. Then I come to find out, he was going to go to trial for the death of Mallory Beach.
Right.
Right. So now we have 3 dead people. Right?
Yep.
So do you remember Aaron Hernandez, who killed himself? The football player, to allow his daughter to get the money from the NFL?
Right.
Because charges would be dropped because he is dead.
Right.
People started saying, what if they killed him because the charges would be dropped? And sure enough, the charges had to be dropped.
Yeah.
But again, people were like, nah, you guys are conspiracists. That's bullshit, blah, 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 da, 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 right? But it's feasible. Or it could be Anthony Cook, right?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Right. Because there are other dead people involved here.
Yes, exactly. It could have been the boyfriend or it could have been the family. We don't know, right? But right now, the people who are the conspiracy theorists are like, hey, you remember that NFL player? That's where we learned that you could die and they have to drop the charges.
Right.
And so the story is that he committed suicide so that his daughter can get the money that the NFL would have provided or something like that. Right. So as we continue to follow the case, so now we have those 3 deaths. During the investigation, they open another death in the Murdoch family circle. Are you ready for this?
Let me guess. This is, what, 2015?
No. Dun, dun, dun. No.
2018.
2018.
The housekeeper.
The Murdoch's housekeeper for more than 20 years died in their home, supposedly of a fall. Her name was Gloria Statterfield. It was ruled an accident of a trip and fall. There was no autopsy done on the body. The Murdoch's family was very close to their housekeeper and the Statterfield family, and they were always under the impression that the Murdoch family, Alex being the head of the family, would always take care of them, right? So now that she died in their home of an accident, apparently a trip and fall, he said, you know what, I'm going to take care of you guys. You know, we're going to handle this, right? So maybe he talked them out of doing a coroner or an autopsy, maybe, right? We don't know. What I learned from this investigation was that when there is insurance claims, right? Life insurance, a lot of us are taught by our financial people that we need to have life insurance, right? For our kids that cover debts or that are able to sustain them for a number of years, right?
Right.
If you die in someone's property, apparently there is a strategy. So sometimes life insurance companies want to fight you and don't want to pay the full amount. So if you and I say, oh, I have $1 million, chances are you are not going to get that money entirely.
Right.
You will get some of it. So what some people do when there is a wrongful death, meaning it was an accident, right? Let's say what basically, and this is what I found out, was Alex came to them and said, I'm going to help you. And he basically was suing his insurance and himself with the family of the housekeeper. He hired the lawyer that would represent the housekeeper's family, right?
Right.
To help in suing himself. And he was part of the lawsuit against himself and his insurance so that they can get paid. That was his reassurance. And when I looked into it, people do that sometimes, where that will help the insurance companies actually pay, right?
Right.
So which people then were like, wait, why would he hire a friend of his, a colleague of his, to help in suing him and the insurance, right? But he was also a plaintiff, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Right? So they fought the insurance company, right? And I didn't know any of this would happen. But now fast forward to the murders of his wife and his son, right? The family never heard anything for 3 years. The Statterfields, the housekeeper's family, didn't hear anything for 5 years from the lawyers. They thought it was just ongoing litigation. After the murders of Alex's son, Paul, and his wife, Maggie, and people were digging, they saw that they got a settlement for $505,000. Wow. The insurance company paid $505,000, but the family was never notified of the housekeeper that money was paid out. So people were like, so Alex, you're a person of interest. There's some shady shit going on here, right? Yes. So they never saw a fucking penny. And apparently when they tried to get they fired that one. They tried to get other lawyers. Some people didn't want to take it up. When a new lawyer took it up now, especially with the new information coming out on this Murdoch dynasty,
right?
They have reason to believe now that the family payout that the insurance gave was probably in the millions and not the reported $505,000.
Oh wow!
But keep in mind, the housekeeper's family, who died of a trip and fall accident never saw a fucking penny. And somehow it sounds like millions of dollars were paid out. To who? To who? If he was part of the plaintiff with them, sounds like Alex Murdoch may have collected the money.
Yeah, I would say so. That's shady.
Very shady. So
That's
all
crazy.
this started to come to light after June 7th of this year, right?
Right.
So now the cops are looking into the housekeeper Gloria's death, and they see, looking back, that the report was, like I said many times, that she fell and tripped and died. But then they noticed her actual death certificate was signed that her death was natural, which is inconsistent with all initial reports that she died of an accident. So that becomes a problem for insurance and all that shit.
Yeah.
So somebody behind the scenes changed up. So we keep seeing they didn't bring Paul in. They didn't do a sobriety test, right?
Yeah.
Then now we're hearing this tampering with life insurance death certificate. So the police are and the true crime online people are like, okay, it's Alex Murdoch. Something's happening with Alex Murdoch, but there's nothing tying him yet. Kind of like the whole Brian Laundrie.
Right. God, so frustrating.
Yes. So we have Maggie's dead. Paul is dead. Marlorie is dead. And Gloria are dead. And they're being looked at now. More digging is done, right?
Right.
We make it to 2015, which is the one that you were talking about, where another death is discovered to potentially have Murdochs messing around with it. And so in 2015, Stephen Smith was found dead about 10 miles from the Murdoch home. This case has now been reopened. And let me tell you why. Stephen Smith was a young, openly gay man who was son of Sandy Smith, whose son's death in 2015 never sat right with her. Initially, it was reported that he was shot in the head. Then the police said, never mind, it was a hit and run. This is 2015, right?
Right.
Then the police said, oh no, he was beat up. So naturally, she became skeptical. You're telling me that my son was shot in the head, then that he was hit by a car, and then that he was beat up, and then now you're saying, okay, we're going to stick to it was a hit and run, right? So the coroner basically said death was likely due to a hit and run, right? So it didn't sit well with her. So this is all public records, right? But it kind of went cold after that because no one followed up. So people are like, oh, we think we smell Murdochs around here. So they started digging, right?
Right.
Turns out that in the documents, someone actually anonymously emailed the police and said that they should look into the Murdoch family. Oh, wait, before I get to that, the police opened the case and specifically told the press, we're opening the case of the 2015 Stephen Smith, right?
Right.
But they wouldn't specify why they were opening it. So people started digging into public records. That's my whole point. They couldn't specify why. So the true crime community was like, well, everything's public record, right?
Was it announced how Stephen Smith died? Was he killed or?
Yes. So initially they said, the coroner said it was specifically hit and run, right?
Right.
But when the true crime community started looking at public records, they did see that she was told that it was a gunshot. Then it was a hit and run. Then it was that he was beat up. But when they would look at it, none of it was consistent.
Right.
So people are saying it probably was a gunshot, but it was covered up. So apparently,
I wonder if they're thinking about ballistics. That's why they opened it up.
Well, they're not saying anything.
Right.
But initially, that's what the Stephen's mom was told, right? But the police told the press the reason, based on the deaths of Maggie and Paul, they're reopening this case. So they must have found something. Could have been, there was two, apparently in the crime scene of Maggie and Paul, each of them were shot in the head, but with two different guns. So I have a feeling they may have made a match. Oh. If that is indeed. Yeah. But per official police, they said, the coroner said it was a hit and run, even though the records show otherwise. When the true crime community started looking into the public records, the police received an anonymous email that was saying you should look into the Murdochs, that they believed that the Murdochs were involved. This is in 2015. Because Buster Murdoch, Paul's older brother, may have had a relationship with Stephen Smith, who was openly gay. He was a classmate in high school of Paul Murdoch's older brother.
Oh, interesting.
They never followed up on that.
Now, do you think perhaps that Alex Murdoch here did not like that relationship and was like,
took
him out?
They never looked into that. So right now we have, who was it? Maggie, Alex's wife, dead. Paul, the prick, spoiled son, dead. Mallory, who it sounds like Paul should have gone to jail for. She's passed. We have Stephen. Oh no, the housekeeper. Let's not forget the housekeeper. Yeah. She fell down the stairs, died of a trip and fall, but somehow in the coroner, they said it was natural causes and the life insurance paid out money and the family never received it. But it sounds like the lawyer who was hired by Alex did receive it, who happened to be a colleague of his, right? And now we have 2015, Stephen, the family was told he was shot. Then it was changed and the coroner said it's probably a hit and run. And they had an email of an anonymous person saying, look into the older Buster Murdoch and Stephen Smith's relationship. Okay. So this is all coming to light since June of this year, right? So now people are like, remember I told you who would want to kill them? Could it be Alex once you start learning all these things?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of people that hate the fucking Murdochs apparently.
Including probably Alex Murdoch himself.
Well, guess what? Did you hear what happened on September 4th?
No.
Police got a call and found that Alex Murdoch had been shot in the head next to his car.
Yes, I did hear this story. It was so fucking crazy. Yeah.
So he survived. Now check this out. I was talking to some friends who were following this and we all were like, nah, this is bullshit. Because we already think he's fucking guilty.
Right.
So it turns out he was then taken to the hospital. He survived. They released a statement saying that he just had like superficial wounds. And his lawyer quickly was like, no, it was not superficial, defensive, right? There was an entry wound and an exit wound, and he had a fractured skull. So his lawyers already gave a statement on his behalf, right?
Yeah.
Very defensive.
Right.
When the police said it was a superficial like scratch on his head.
I know.
Motherfucker survived, right? He was released, and after he was released, he made a statement that he was resigning from his position as a lawyer at the PMPED law firm and was entering rehab immediately to address some of his opioid addictions that he's had for 20 years and also got worse with all these murders. And also in his statement, he apologized to anyone, family, friends, and colleagues that he may have hurt by his actions. That same day after his lawyer put out that statement, PMPED, remember the family helped open this firm with other families. This dynasty Murdoch family released a statement that Alex had been stealing money from the firm and he was let go.
Oh, damn.
And so immediately his lost license was suspended by the board while they investigate.
Wow. Dun, dun, dun. I wonder how they found that out, though. How did they finally catch up with him stealing?
You know, this is what I think. Now, again, I always say this in all my episodes. I'm not a lawyer. But I think when the first murders came of his, everyone was like, oh my God, who would want to target this family? They already saw maybe they already knew, they already heard rumblings of people, right? Talking about the family being shady and privileged. They probably found out the lawyers for the family who never got money, probably they reached out to them, I'm sure. the new lawyers, and they probably were like, we need to do ourselves with this dude now.
Right.
Because his ship is sinking quick. And they probably, I'm assuming they probably found stuff, or maybe they already knew, but now they were like, we need to get rid of him because there's obviously stealing money from the organization. He stole money from his housekeeper's family, it sounds like.
Right.
The new lawyers are saying it was probably in the millions.
Jeez.
Their lawyers probably spoke to the law firm, and I'm sure, it's a sinking ship. That's just, we don't know, but that's basically what I think. Things change very quickly, right?
Right.
Okay, so who would want to kill Alex Murdaugh? Let's get into that. September 14th, 10 days after he was supposedly, now we're talking this last month, right?
Yeah.
Supposedly shot by someone who wanted to murder him. Curtis Smith is arrested and charged with shooting Alex Murdaugh on September 4th, right? But apparently, Murdoch paid Curtis Smith, a former client, to help kill him in a suicide attempt. He wanted him to kill him. Investigators learned that Alex gave him the gun to shoot him. And initially he said, I was changing a tire and I thought this guy was going to come and help me, but he shot me, so I couldn't see him, but it was a blue truck. Now it turns out it was his plan. He wanted him to kill. He said, kill me, basically. And apparently it was because he wanted his son, his only living son now, because his wife is dead, right? His young son is dead.
That's right.
Would get a $10 million life insurance policy. That was his plan.
So he basically was a suicide for hire. Like basically he wanted to die, but he schemed this so that the son could collect money.
Yeah.
That's
now
so
think
crazy.
about all this shit's happened since June.
So,
how all these cases started opening, fraud, murder,
so let's say
murder.
let's say this is true, right? This Curtis guy admits to it, right?
He did.
Was he just so stupid and did not aim correctly? Like, was it just by coincidence that he just missed and like grazed his head? You know what I'm saying? Like, he should have been dead, right?
Should have, but destiny had it that he just grazed him.
Oh, damn. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yep. So basically he had to just turn himself in. He survived. They arrested him. He turned himself in. The lawyers for Alex Murdaugh are playing the opiate addiction card in his defense so far. Alex Murdaugh is now facing charges of insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and filing a false police report, and had a $20,000 bond put on him. He is currently in an out-of-state rehab center right now.
Huh. With a hole in his head, supposedly. Supposedly,
but per the police, it was so my thing is, here the story started. Who would want to kill the family of this prominent lawyer dynasty, right? He calls 911. He's distraught, right? His alibi, going back to that, was that he was with his father who was dying, because his father died like a day or two after his wife and son were murdered.
Oh, right.
So that was his alibi. He was with his father, who's dead now because he was dying at the time. Could he have killed him too? I don't know. Nobody's looking into that, but
yeah.
So right now he's in rehab. He's only being charged with those charges that I discussed. His son, the charges against his son were dropped because he's dead, right? I have a feeling he killed the housekeeper, his wife, the son, and apparently it just came out a day or two that the wife had actually sought a divorce lawyer a few weeks prior to her murder as well.
Oh, wow.
So it sounds like this dude was spiraling. And it's not looking really good.
That, all during which supposedly he's a drug addict for 20 years.
Yeah.
Right?
So they say. Yeah. I mean, he probably was, right? He's probably an alcoholic, they have money, blah, blah, blah. He was obviously stealing money, whether it was from the housekeeper's family.
Right.
There was obviously fraud, insurance fraud, right? I mean, he asked someone to kill him so that his living son could, it's just bad. I think he found out that his oldest son, who's still alive, maybe was having a relationship with this young Stephen, and he didn't like it. So we're probably going to find out more, because all these cases that were cold or anything, they're all being reopened. The family of the housekeeper now believe that there was something shady because of the way they found out that money was awarded. But because he joined them, because it is a strategy some people have, he joined them in the lawsuit against himself and the insurance, which is a legal tactic some people use, which I didn't know. I didn't know about. They did pay out, but they didn't receive anything. And it sounds like with the new lawyers this family has that are not paid by Alex, it sounds like it could have been millions. His law firm letting him go for stealing money. You know, it just sounds pretty shady.
Right.
And I do believe the investigation is ongoing. I do believe they're going to find a lot of people at fault. The coroner's office, right? Why would you say there's a bullet wound? Why would you name it this?
Right.
If it's a hit and run accident or falling off the stairs accident, why would you write this on the death certificate? Like, there's going to be a lot of head rollings, I think. But definitely. I'm fascinated by this.
It is interesting because it just shows you that power can buy you, money and power can buy you anything in this case. You know, not just drugs, but it can get your family off, your son off from being charged underage DUI, you know, murder, you know, conspiracy. I mean, I think the interesting part about this case is that in the state of South Carolina, this is where it's all unfolding, right?
Mm-hmm.
There must be specific laws that deal with next of kin or insurance policies and collect, you know what I'm saying? Where like they're probably relaxed or there's a loophole somewhere. And this guy clearly was a lawyer, worked at a law firm, and he probably knew what those loopholes are. How he could collect possibly millions from the housekeeper's death, you know? How he could set up to collect millions to just end his life so that his son could get it, you know? So he probably knew how he could get away with it. Because I'm sure other states, probably like, let's say California, I'm sure they're much more strict here. And probably you can't get away with this kind of stuff, you know? So I wonder what the laws are. And I think that's going to unfold as people look into this deeper and deeper. The specific like language is going to play a big part, I think, and unravel that this dude was all about the money, always, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe, I mean, I can't remember, is it a blue state or red state?
I want to say red. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, I'm not sure because I know one of those flipped recently. But anyways, you know, down in the South, you know, a lot of families are Christian, you know what I'm saying? They don't look upon, you know, kindly of, you know, gay relationships, you know? So maybe if his son was involved in one, he was kind of like, drove him just crazy, you know, at that point, you know?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you know, his drug addiction, on top of that, his wife, you know, filing for divorce, and then his son's problems, you know, so it's like there's a lot going on that he probably was just like, fuck everybody, you know?
Yeah. So just imagine that. Let's say he already fucked up. Let's say he's like, shit.
Right.
2015, Stephen. Okay, I lost it. What happened with, you know, none of us would have thought, and neither would the housekeeper's family thought something was wrong if it wasn't for this, right? But also to look back and see the inconsistencies in the office and the coroner, you know what I mean?
Right.
So now people are like, so he's obviously been meddling, right?
Yeah.
He's been meddling. So let's say the wife did say, I'm filing for divorce, because with the son being a prick and not giving a shit, right? They probably had a hard year as a family, a unit, right? The four of them. And he was probably angry at his son, right? Now he's being taken to trial, right? And another thing that was the people found, the true crime enthusiasts found online, was the depositions of this mediation. 2 of the 5 people who were part of the accident, or 2 of the 4 who survived, right? All of a sudden changed their story in the mediation to that they didn't remember or if Paul was driving, and maybe they were all switching hands at one point. So people believe that shows that they were probably being pressured by the Murdochs or intimidated because they had that much power. And in the police audio, one of the passengers says, "You know whose son that is, right? That's the Murdoch's son. Good luck." And you hear it in the thing. So they already knew this motherfucker's going to get off.
Yeah.
And the cop says, "Yes, we know who he is," you know. So all of that just goes to show you that this motherfucker, Alex, probably lost it. He had already probably had anger issues. Maybe killed Stephen.
Right.
Right? Because if he was having an affair with his son, his oldest.
Right.
What happened between the housekeeper could have pushed her off. We don't know. But the shadiness that came after that with the investigation and the life insurance says shady. And maybe the wife was like, "I'm divorcing you," and he was angry with her. And then 3 days before he murdered them, because I do believe he murdered them, is that, you know, they had to go to trial now. They lost mediation. It failed. So he said, I think did it. And then as more stuff started to come out and the police started to reopen these cases because of shit they were finding that they have yet to tell, but the true crime people are out there looking and searching, right? We have all this shit going on, and then this motherfucker tries to kill himself by paying someone, giving them the gun, and then the motherfucker survives.
That's crazy.
And he's in jail. Well, no, he's in rehab right now. $20,000 bond is not that much.
No. I'm sure they spend a night of drinking, you know, in circles, you know.
Yeah, so it sounds like the lawyers are going to use, you know, the defense of he's an addict, blah, 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 whatever that is. But I think he has his hands all over it. But it quickly turned into he was a person of interest, and now look at this web. Who knows? Maybe there's more we don't know, but this is just what we know as of now.
Right.
So, yeah. I hope I didn't bore you.
No, this is a wild story. I mean, and one of, this is where I really, really wish that the judges involved have the balls to really go after these people. Mm-hmm. This whole thing with like $20,000 bail, that's a slap in the hand. That guy can drink that much in one night in a fancy bar tab, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They should have been like, no bail, you know?
Yeah.
Because of flight risk or because of injury or suicide risk, you know? Because they really, like, there's got to be a good judge out there that would really want to dig deeper and go after him and really get, you know what I'm saying? Because this is obviously privileged people with power, and they're getting away with it, you know? Mm-hmm. In this case, Alex, you know, not everybody else, but everybody else is dead. But, you know, they got away with it. It's pretty much dead, but...
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Paul got away with it because Dad killed him.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm just assuming.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It is quite the wild story. It's crazy.
Yeah. So I think not everyone's going to get resolution in the end.
Right.
But there was an interview of Stephen's mom. And she basically said, you know, she felt she was not listened to when she was looking for follow-up because she's poor. Because he was gay.
Yeah.
And so she says, if, you know, she still doesn't know how he died because she was told he had a gunshot to his head and then told multiple other reasons why. And then his death certificate said something else. So she just says this might be, if he was murdered, at least there'd be a resolution to me thinking, why have I been lied to all this time? And, you know, because I'm poor, no one's listening to me.
Right.
That really broke my heart.
And it's the absolute truth, you know?
Yeah.
That's the sad part, that it is the absolute truth, and nobody's going to look into it, nobody's going to care, and it's going to get buried, and, you know.
And we're, 2015, we're 2021. That was 6 years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So for 6 years, this is how this mother felt. No one cares about my son's death.
Yeah,
They told me he was shot, then they changed it, then they changed it. Like she feels like I can't bring my son back, but at least I'll have some resolution now, it seems, as it's an open investigation.
God, it's so unfortunate. It's so sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really, really sad. So I will definitely keep following this case up. Obviously, they just charged him with those things, but it sounds like all the other murders and deaths are being investigated. If they do find more, I do think they're going to get him for his wife and son's murder. I think. And if they do find stuff with the insurance fraud for the housekeeper, they might not be able to get her, but they'll probably be, maybe, unless people snitch on him, right?
Right.
If the coroner's not going to want to get in trouble, I'm sure. I mean,
somebody knows something. There's a circle of people that know what went down and what they were asked to do, whether falsify documents or change their story, or so people do know. The question is, are they going to have the balls to come forward and tell the truth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they might now, because like I said, when this happened, the internet went ablaze. That normal people living out there were like, "Hey, Paul's an asshole. He was a dickhead. Like, you guys need to look into this." So the power of social media.
Yeah, power for sure. I have one last question for you, though.
Yeah.
Or thought, should I say? The murders of the mom and the son of is it Maggie?
Maggie, and Paul.
Maggie and Paul took place in the hunting cabin location on the grounds of the hunting grounds, right? I'm surprised he didn't come forward and say, "Oh, we don't know what happened. It was a hunting accident or something." I'm surprised they didn't spin that story. So it's kind of, I guess the way he's playing it is like, "Oh, I found them. They were murdered."
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really suspicious.
Yeah.
Because obviously they're gonna start asking, what were they doing there? Do they go off, and why do they go off? So I don't know. It's just, the story's gonna get crazier for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And remember, they reopened these other two cases just after that murder. And the police said, we're reopening the 2015 death of Stephen because of stuff we found out from the murder of Paul and Maggie. So remember when they said that one was shot with one gun, one was shot with another gun? They're not giving information out, but my mind is ballistics, probably one of the guns, if he was indeed shot, matched the 2015. So that shows cover up all around. Apparently the FBI is also in it. So I do believe heads are going to be rolling soon.
Yeah.
In the coming year or two.
Yeah. Once it gets federal don't mess around. They'll find it,
Yeah.
It's going to take some time, but they'll find it.
Yeah. So as far as what he's being charged with, I don't know that that's federal charges. But definitely, apparently in the investigations to the other deaths, the FBI is helping. So they're going to get him and other people, I think. And I think that's why the law firm was like, let's drop him. Too much of a liability.
Right.
Yeah, because the law firm is a Murdoch law firm, but there, I think, is like 4 other families in it too. So yeah, very, very interesting. So guys, follow up the Murdoch family murders. I'm sure you guys are going to start seeing it on the news more. But yeah, I definitely am very intrigued by this, as I'm sure a lot of you guys are as well.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Leonie, for joining me for another episode.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure.
Well, guys, thank you for joining us and making it this far. But just remember, next week we're going to do a Halloween tribute. So I'm excited to hear Leonie's expertise.
And one last thing for you, Mary. Arrivederci.
Oh, I love it. Why do I blush every time you say hi and bye?
Ooh, I got that effect on the ladies, yes.
Bye, everyone. That was episode 74 of the Purposely Curious podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on most podcast platforms, and follow us on social media at Purposely Curious on Instagram and at Purposely C Pod on Twitter. That's Purposely, the letter C, Pod. Until next time, you know what to do.